The sun on Zephyr Station was not a real sun. It was a massive light built into the station's rotating rings, designed to mimic the dawn and dusk of 100 different worlds. As the fake dawn spread across the Grand Colosseum, Hayes stood in the preparation chamber and felt the weight of everything resting on his shoulders. He was a soldier. He had fought in 3 planetary conflicts and commanded fleets across hostile space. But this was different. This was personal. This was about whether humanity belonged in the galaxy at all. The Syndicate had made their position clear 6 months ago. Humans were weak. Humans were not worthy of trading rights. Humans were a novelty species that should stick to their single colony on 7 and know their place. When the humans tried to negotiate, they laughed. They said humans could not survive in a real commercial alliance. Real species had strength. Real species had power. Humans had neither. The Galactic Council, tired of the conflict, had proposed a solution. A trial by combat. 1 human against 1, the strongest champion from each side. Winner takes everything. Loser accepts a decade of isolation. No pressure, thought to himself. The preparation chamber was cool and quiet. Medical scanners hung from the ceiling, ready to monitor vital signs during the fight. A younger human woman, Dr. Cooper, sat on a metal bench nearby. She was a scientist, not a soldier, but she had insisted on coming. She was his friend, and she wanted to be there when he won or died trying. "You look calm," said. "I am not calm," replied. He pulled on his combat suit, designed by human engineers to distribute impact force across the body in ways alien armor could not match. "I am terrified, but I have learned that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing what must be done even when you are afraid." Smiled slightly. It was a human expression, and it was rare. "That was a good quote. Did you make that up?" "No, my grandmother told me that when I was 8 years old. I never forgot it." The preparation door hissed open. A Galactic Council representative entered, a tall alien with pale blue skin and 4 eyes. His name was difficult to pronounce, so just called him Commissioner. "The arena is ready," the Commissioner said. "Your opponent has arrived. Are you prepared?" Looked at, she gave him a small nod. He looked back at the Commissioner. "I am ready," said. The walk to the arena floor felt both too short and too long, emerged into a roar of sound that hit him like a physical force. The Colosseum was massive, carved from rock during the ancient days of Zephyr Station, when it was a fortress before it became a trade hub. 50,000 beings from 100 different species packed into the seats above. They had come to watch a human die. At least that was what they thought would happen. The arena floor was circular, about 200 meters across. Sand covered the ground. Simple, direct, no hiding, no tricks, just 2 fighters and the basic rules of combat. On the opposite side of the arena stood. He was massive. The champion stood nearly 3 meters tall, with gray-green skin that seemed to reflect light like polished metal. He had 4 arms, each one as thick as leg. 2 primary arms hung from his shoulders. 2 secondary arms sprouted from his lower chest. All 4 were heavily muscled. His face was angular and strong, with a ridge of bone running down his forehead like a crest. His eyes locked on, and his mouth opened in something that might have been a smile or might have been a growl. It was hard to tell with. "Small human," his voice boomed across the arena, amplified by speakers built into the stone. "Today you die. Today your species learns that are superior. Today the galaxy watches as nature proves itself true." Walked to the center of the arena. He did not run, he did not hurry, he walked with purpose. The crowd began to quiet, sensing that something unexpected was happening. Usually when a human faced a warrior, the human looked afraid, looked focused. "I am Hayes," he said, his voice steady. "I fight for my people, I fight for the colony on 7. I fight to prove that humans belong in this galaxy, and I will not fail." Laughed. It was a sound like an avalanche, deep and echoing. He began to walk toward the center as well. His 4 arms moved in anticipation. His legs, thick and powerful, covered the ground quickly despite his size. The Commissioner raised his hand. Both fighters stopped. "The rules are simple," the Commissioner announced. "First one who yields or cannot continue loses. There are no other rules. This is trial by combat. This is judgment by strength." He lowered his hand. Exploded forward. He moved faster than something that large should be able to move. His first punch came from his right primary arm, aimed at its head. It was a testing blow, a way to measure his opponent's speed. Rolled left, letting the massive fist pass inches from his face. The punch struck the sand behind him and created a small crater. Second punch came from his left primary arm, faster than the first. Blocked it with his forearm, feeling the impact drive through his bones. It hurt, but his arm did not break. The suit absorbed some of the force. His body absorbed the rest. The pulled back both primary arms and tried to close in with his secondary arms. One came up towards ribs. The other came down toward his legs, jumped backward, creating distance. Followed his footsteps shaking the sand. For the first 15 minutes dominated. He was faster than expected. He was stronger. He had 4 arms instead of 2. Every punch, every kick, every attack was calculated to end the fight quickly. The crowd roared with approval. This was exactly what they had expected. But as the fight continued, something shifted, began to move with purpose instead of panic. He stopped trying to block attacks and started moving out of the way. He used the arena space strategically, never letting back him into a corner. He watched how attacked. After the 5th exchange, could see the pattern. Always began with his primary arms. He always followed with his secondary arms. The pattern never changed. It was effective, which meant had never needed to change it. He had never faced an opponent who could study his movements and adapt. 20 minutes into the fight, stopped blocking and started countering. Went through his right primary punch, pivoted and let the fist pass. As body came forward with the momentum, struck his exposed side. It was not a heavy blow by standards, but it was a blow. Blood appeared. Roared in anger, not pain. Did not feel pain the way humans did, but they felt injury, and injury meant weakness. The arena erupted in shocked silence. A human had drawn blood from. The impossible was happening. His eyes blazed with fury. He abandoned strategy and charged forward, throwing punches from all 4 arms in a desperate assault. Moved backward, sidestepping, rolling, letting the attacks flow past him. Each miss made angrier. Each moment of wasted energy made the fight more even. After an hour, was breathing heavily. Was breathing hard too, but his breathing was controlled. His heart rate was stable. His mind was clear. He had not lost focus for a single moment. His attacks came slower now. His movements were still powerful, but they were no longer fast. The massive alien was beginning to tire. The crowd had fallen silent, watching in disbelief as a human wore down a champion. Saw his opportunity coming. Launched another combination attack, but this time all 4 arms moved as one in a desperate pushing motion, trying to knock to the ground through sheer force. It was his last real move. En's momentum carried him past. The stumbled forward. His massive body fought for balance, positioned himself perfectly. He could end this. He could take the victory. He could prove humanity was strong. Instead, stepped back. He lowered his weapons slightly. Turned around, breathing heavily, his 4 arms trembling with fatigue. His eyes blazed with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "Finish me," snarled. Looked at him. He looked at the 50,000 silent faces in the stands above. The question hung in the air like a blade suspended above a chasm. 50,000 alien beings sat frozen, trying to understand what had just been asked. Stared at, his 4 arms hanging at his sides, his massive chest heaving with exertion. The champion had been winning his entire life. He had never been beaten. He had never been tired. He had never faced an opponent who stood over him with the power to end his life and instead asked him what he wanted. "What does that mean?" asked, his voice hoarse from breathing so hard. "You make no sense, human." Kept his distance. He was not being arrogant or dismissive. He was being practical, was still a deadly fighter, tired or not. A wounded animal was sometimes the most dangerous. "It means I have won," said. His voice was clear and simple. "You cannot continue. Your arms move slower. Your breathing is broken. Your body is exhausted. I can strike you down now. The crowd wants me to strike you down. My culture would celebrate if I struck you down, but I am asking you what you want." Made a sound that was almost a laugh. It came out broken and raw. "You are asking what I want? I want to live. No fighter in the history of my people has ever been offered that by a defeated enemy. The option has never existed." "Now it does," said. He waited. He was still ready to fight if came at him again. But his posture, his breathing, his entire presence suggested something else. It suggested that was not interested in continuing this fight unless forced him to. It suggested that had already proven what needed to be proven. The champion stayed on his feet. He was still strong enough to fight, but something had shifted inside him. For the first time in his life, understood that he was going to lose. Not because he was weak, but because he was human and humans had something had not encountered before. Humans had choice. His four arms came up slowly, but not to attack. Instead, he raised them in a gesture of surrender. He lowered his massive frame down to one knee, then sat fully on the sand. The arena exploded in sound. The noise was not cheering. It was not the roar of approval for violence that usually filled the Colosseum. It was a mixture of sounds: shock, confusion, anger, respect, disbelief. The 50,000 beings in the stands above had come expecting a brutal fight. They had gotten something else entirely. They had gotten a lesson in strength they did not expect to learn. Stood up from her seat in the viewing box reserved for human observers. Tears were running down her face. She did not look sad. She looked like someone who had just witnessed something that changed everything. Commissioner stood as well, his four eyes fixed on the arena below. He was no longer a neutral observer. Something in his expression had shifted. He looked like he was watching the beginning of something much larger than a trial by combat. In the preparation chamber, other human observers began to stand. News crews recorded everything. Diplomatic vessels throughout Zephyr Station registered the change in tone from the Colosseum. Even before the fight officially ended, the message was spreading through communications channels across 3 star systems. A human had beaten her not through brute force, but through intelligence, adaptability, and control. Did not celebrate. He did not raise his arms in victory. Instead, he walked slowly to where sat in the sand. The champion looked up at the human approaching him. In his eyes was something had not expected to see. It was not anger. It was not hatred. It was recognition. "You are not what I thought you were," said. "No," agreed, "and you are not what you thought you were either." Extended his hand downward. It was a human gesture, one that meant he was offering help. In culture, such an offer would never be made to a defeated enemy. A warrior who was down stayed down. To help them up would be an insult to their honor. Stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached up with one of his primary arms and grasped it, pulled, and the massive came to his feet. For a moment, the two fighters stood facing each other in the center of the arena. The arena was not silent now. It roared with a sound that was neither approval nor disapproval. It was the sound of 1,000 species processing something that fundamentally changed their understanding of the galaxy. The commissioner walked down onto the arena floor. He moved with the slow, deliberate pace of someone making an official announcement. He stopped between and... "The trial is complete," Commissioner said. His voice carried across the Colosseum through amplification systems. "The human fighter Hayes stands. The champion yields. By the rules of this trial, the human is victorious. The colony on 7 receives full trading rights with the Galactic Council. The Syndicate must accept the terms of peace with humanity." The commissioner turned to face. "Do you accept the outcome?" Did not hesitate. "I accept. Hayes has defeated me not through superior strength, but through superior strategy and control. My people underestimated what strength truly means. I will report this to the Council. Our position will change." Commissioner turned to, "Do you accept your victory?" Looked at, then he looked up at the silent crowd in the stands. Then he looked back at the commissioner. "I accept," said, "but I want it known that this victory belongs to my entire species. We have survived on a hostile world. We have adapted to every challenge nature threw at us. We have learned to be strong not through hurting others, but through choosing not to hurt even when we could. That is what you saw today." The commissioner nodded. It was a small gesture, but it meant that his words had been recorded and would be distributed to every corner of the galaxy. Walked toward the exit of the arena, his body still trembling slightly with exhaustion. But as he reached the edge of the sand, he stopped. He turned back to look at one final time. "You asked if I wanted you to keep me whole or tear me apart," said loud enough for the entire Colosseum to hear. "I understand now that question was not about 2 ways to be destroyed. It was about 2 ways I could choose to live. You gave me back my life, but you also gave me back my honor. Among my people, I am now a legend, not because I won, but because I lost and lived to understand why." Continued walking and disappeared through the arena exit. The medical teams that had been prepared to rush onto the floor began to stand down, did not need them. His injuries were manageable. His body would heal quickly, as human bodies were designed to do. Rushed down from the viewing platform. She ran across the arena sand and embraced, not caring about his sweat or his minor injuries. She was crying and laughing at the same time. "You did it," she said. "You actually did it." "We did it," corrected. Everyone in seven did this. I just happened to be the one standing in the arena. But even as he said those words, he knew something had changed. The trial was over. But the real work was just beginning. The galaxy now knew that humans were stronger than anyone had believed. And more importantly, the galaxy now knew that humans understood something about strength that the commission chambers on Zephyr Station occupied the highest level of the station, where the view stretched across thousands of kilometers of open space. The Galactic Council met only once per year in physical form. Most of their communication happened through quantum-linked transmission systems that allowed them to meet without actually being in the same location. But the decision about humanity's place in the galaxy required a physical assembly. 3 days after the trial in the Colosseum, sat in the observation gallery while the council debated. There were 12 council members, each representing different galactic regions and species. There was a delegate, though not himself. There was a human representative, though that role had been created just for this meeting. And there were 10 others, each one powerful enough to speak for billions of beings. The human representative was a woman named Price. She was older than in her 60s, with gray streaking through her dark hair. She had been a diplomat before becoming humanity's voice at the council. She had fought harder than anyone to secure this meeting and this chance. "The evidence is overwhelming," was saying to the council. The human fighter Hayes defeated a champion from a species that has never lost a combat trial in recorded history. But more importantly, he did so while demonstrating tactical intelligence, physical adaptability, and remarkable control. "Control is not the issue," said a thin, bird-like creature from the collective. "Physical capability is not the issue. The issue is whether humans represent a stable influence on galactic commerce. We know they are capable in combat. We are now questioning whether they understand diplomacy and restraint in political matters." "That is exactly why we are here," replied. Hayes showed more restraint in victory than most species show in defeat. He offered his defeated opponent a choice. He could have killed, the crowd would have celebrated. His own people would have honored him as the greatest warrior of his generation. Instead, he chose something harder. He chose to give his enemy a chance to survive with honor intact. The delegate stood up. He was older than, with scars running across his face and down his neck from countless battles. His name was, and he was the chief military advisor to the entire syndicate. "I will not waste the council's time with false modesty," said. "My people came to this trial expecting victory. My people left with something different. We left with respect. Hayes defeated our champion in fair combat. That alone is remarkable. But what happened after the trial is why I stand before you today to speak on behalf of the syndicate." He paused and looked directly in the observation gallery. "Has requested something unprecedented," continued. "He has requested to work directly with the human colony on 7. He believes that understanding how humans train, how humans think, and how humans approach problems could benefit military doctrine. My council has approved this request. We believe that humanity has something to teach us, and we believe that Hayes has earned the right to be heard when he speaks about his people's capabilities." The chamber erupted in sound. Most of the council members began speaking at once. Arguments broke out in 3 different languages. A delegate demanded to know why would ally with humans. A demanded that the council investigate the trial for potential corruption. Stood calmly, letting the chaos play out around her. Watched from the observation gallery and understood that politics was very different from combat. In combat, there were clear rules and clear outcomes. In politics, everything was ambiguous and nothing was ever truly settled. It took 2 hours for the council to reach a decision. When they finally did, it was delivered by Commissioner, who had moderated the trial and was now one of the voting members. "The Galactic Council recognizes humanity as a fully fledged member species of the galactic community," Commissioner announced. "The colony on 7 receives immediate access to all standard trading routes. Additionally, humanity is granted access to educational programs, diplomatic services, and military alliance partnerships." He paused and continued. "Furthermore, the Council recognizes that humanity demonstrates qualities that have become increasingly rare in advanced galactic civilization. Specifically, the ability to show strength through restraint and the willingness to show mercy without weakness. For this reason, the Council establishes a new position: human advocates. 5 humans will be selected to serve on the Council's advisory board, providing input on matters of diplomacy, conflict resolution, and ethical decision-making." placed her hand on her heart in the human gesture of respect. Around the chamber, other species began to follow the gesture, some adapting it to their own physical forms. What had been a rare human custom was becoming something the entire galaxy recognized. That evening received a message from. The warrior had left Zephyr Station and was on his way to 7. He would arrive in 3 days. He wanted to meet with not as a defeated enemy, but as someone who had discovered something important about himself through defeat. Went to the observation deck of the station and looked out at the stars. He thought about how different his life was now compared to 1 week ago. A week ago, he was just a military officer protecting a small human colony. Now he was the representative of something larger. He was proof that humans belonged in the galaxy not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they understood something that advanced civilizations had lost. Found him at the observation window. She stood next to him without speaking for a long time. "You changed the galaxy," she finally said. "No," replied. "The galaxy changed itself. I just gave it a reason to look at itself differently." "That is the same thing," said. They stood together in silence, watching the stars wheel slowly above them as the station Rot arrived on 7 exactly when his message had promised. His ship was built for strength and durability rather than elegance. It landed in the colony's main settlement with a force that made the ground shake, but not in a way that caused damage. They knew how to land heavy ships carefully. Was waiting when emerged from the ship. The massive warrior looked different now. His body still bore the marks of the fight in the arena, but there was something else in his posture. It was not humility, did not do humility, but it was a kind of openness, like someone who had been walking in one direction for his entire life and had finally stopped to look around and see what he had been missing. "Hayes," said, his deep voice carrying across the landing pad, "you look like you have recovered well from our trial." "As have you," replied. He offered his hand in the human gesture of greeting, looked at it for a moment, then reached out with one of his primary arms and clasped it. His grip was gentle, controlled. Could crush a human hand easily if they wanted to, that he chose not to showed he understood something important about respect. "Come," said, "let me show you the colony." The tour of 7 lasted most of the day. Showed the agricultural sector where humans grew food in the harsh soil of the alien world. He showed the water purification systems that turned mineral-rich groundwater into something drinkable. He showed the defensive structures that protected the colony from the predators that hunted in the wilderness beyond the settlement walls. What he was really showing, though, was how humans survived on a world that wanted to kill them. Every system was built with redundancy. Every structure was reinforced with materials that could withstand the tremors of the planet's active tectonic zones. Every weapon was designed not just to kill, but to be reliable in conditions that would break most other technology. 7 was not beautiful by any conventional measure. It was harsh and ugly and built for survival rather than comfort. But it worked. And it worked because humans had learned to adapt to anything nature threw at them. Stopped at one point and looked at a group of human children playing near the settlement walls. They were constructing something out of rocks and metal scraps, building what looked like a miniature fortress. As they worked, they argued about the best way to defend it against imaginary invaders. They were building strategy into their play, preparing themselves for survival without even knowing it. "In my culture," said slowly, "children are kept away from conflict. They are protected until they reach maturity, and then they are trained in the ways of combat. They learn how to fight, but they do not learn how to think like a fighter until they are already adults. Your children, I see, are being raised differently." "We cannot afford to separate learning from survival," said. "If a child grows up without understanding how to be creative, how to work with others, how to adapt to problems, then that child will die when they are old enough to face real danger. So we teach them survival and problem-solving at the same time we teach them to laugh and play." Was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "This is why you defeated me. It is not because you are individually stronger or faster. It is because you have been training yourself to survive impossible situations since the moment you could walk." "Yes," agreed. "Your people train warriors from childhood. Mine train survivors, and a survivor is more dangerous than a warrior because a warrior learns how to fight, but a survivor learns how to live." They continued walking and asked questions about everything. How did humans manage stress in a colony where they lived or died based on every decision? How did they prevent conflicts when resources were limited? How did they ensure that no one person had too much power? How did they maintain hope when they were living on a world that actively tried to kill them? Answered honestly. Humans fought with each other. Humans made mistakes. Humans sometimes gave up. But they also always got back up and tried again. It was not noble. It was not beautiful. It was just what humans did. That evening, invited to dinner with his family. He lived in a modest home carved partially into the Rock of Seven, with walls reinforced against the earthquakes that struck every few weeks. His wife was named. His 2 children were named Daniel and Sarah. They were ages 7 and 9. Had been nervous about having a warrior in her home. But when she saw how moved carefully to avoid hitting the ceiling with his crest, how he sat slowly on furniture that had to be reinforced to hold his weight, how he looked at her children with something that might have been wonder, her nervousness disappeared. "You are the one who lost to my husband in the trial," said. It was not a question. "I am," confirmed. "I came to Seven because I wanted to understand how that happened, but now I am here, I am learning why it happened. Your husband does not fight because he has been trained to fight. He fights because he understands that fighting is sometimes necessary. That is a very different thing." Sarah's younger daughter asked a question that caught everyone by surprise. "Why do you have 4 arms?" she asked. She was young enough that the question came without the social filters that adults used. Looked at her with his massive alien eyes. Then he made a sound that might have been laughter. "I have 4 arms because my species evolved them," said. "We are stronger because of them, but I have learned from your father that having more strength does not always make you more wise. Your father has 2 arms and he defeated me. That tells me that arms do not matter. What matters is what is inside here." Pointed to his chest, directly where his heart would be. After dinner and stood on the observation platform overlooking the colony. The twin moons of Seven were rising, casting a blue-green light across the settlement below. From here, they could see the lights of the habitats, the workshops, the agricultural facilities. They could see the entire human world, built from nothing by people who refused to surrender to the planet's hostility. "I came here expecting to hate you," said. "I came here expecting to find weakness disguised as mercy, but I was wrong. The mercy you showed me was not weakness, it was confidence. Only someone certain of their own strength can afford to show mercy. Only someone certain of their own strength can offer an enemy a choice." "You will return to space," said. It was not a question. "I will," confirmed. "But I will not return as a defeated warrior who stumbled into a miracle." 6 months after the trial in the arena, the Galactic Council held its first official session with human representatives present. The 5 humans selected as human advocates stood before the council chamber in formal dress. Hayes was among them, though he had argued strongly that he was not a diplomat and that others were better suited to the role. The council had overruled him. They said that understood something essential about strength and leadership that needed to be part of the galactic conversation. They said that his presence alone would change how other species approached conflict and negotiation. Price was also among the 5 advocates. She smiled at from her position in the chamber. Her expression said that she had known this would happen all along. The issues before the council that day were complex. There was a dispute between the collective and the Empire over mining rights to a system that both claimed. There was a conflict between 3 smaller species over water rights to a moon in neutral space. There were trade agreements that needed to be negotiated, security concerns that needed to be addressed, and countless other matters that required wisdom and careful thought. For the first 3 issues, the council followed the traditional pattern. Debate happened. Positions were stated. Arguments were made. Threats were made barely hidden in polite language. No one yielded. No one compromised. The arguments went in circles. Then the council turned to the human representatives. "The human advocates are asked for their perspective on the matter of mining rights," the council chair said. The chair was a massive crystalline being from the Silicon Collective, someone who had overseen galactic commerce for 40 years. Stood up slowly. He was not a natural speaker and he was not comfortable with formal address, but he had learned something important in the past 6 months. The galaxy did not need perfect speakers. It needed honest speakers. "In my judgment," said, "both thee and thee are measuring the value of the mining contract in the wrong way. You are both assuming that there is only one correct outcome. One of you wins the contract and one of you loses. That is how military conflicts work. That is not how stable commerce works." "Explain," the council chair demanded. "They have excellent mining technology," continued. They have excellent distribution networks. Neither of you has both. If you work together, you can extract more minerals from the system and distribute them faster than either of you could alone. You both lose if you fight for exclusive rights. You both win if you share the responsibility. The chamber erupted in arguments. The delegate insisted that were not trustworthy. The delegate insisted that had never shared resources fairly. The arguments went on for an hour. Then something unexpected happened. Who had remained on Zephyr Station to observe the council's proceedings and provide military insight, stood up in the visitors section. He was not supposed to speak. Visitors were not given the right to address the council. "I will share a personal story," said, his deep voice cutting through the arguments. "I came to this station expecting to prove that I was the strongest. I believed that strength meant winning by defeating others. I found a human who understood strength differently. I found a human who defeated me and then offered me a choice about my own future." The chamber fell silent. "The question asked me was simple," continued. "He asked if I wanted him to keep me whole or tear me apart. That question contained an assumption. It assumed that I had the power to choose who I would be. That assumption changed my life. I suggest that thee and use that same assumption. Assume that you have the power to choose who you want to be in this situation. Not fighters competing for exclusive resources, but partners building something together." The council considered this. The delegate and the delegate looked at each other. Then they called for a recess and left the chamber together. When they returned an hour later, they had agreed to the joint partnership that had suggested. Neither side had lost. Both sides had gained. The pattern continued throughout the day. When conflicts came before the council, the human advocates offered a different perspective. They did not side with one party against another. They looked for solutions where all parties gained something instead of some gaining everything and others losing everything. By the end of the session, 4 major disputes had been resolved. 3 new trade agreements had been established, and the Galactic Council had begun to change the way it approached conflict. After the session ended, returned to his quarters on Zephyr Station. Was waiting for him, as she often did. They had become partners in more than just friendship. Now served as scientific advisor, helping him understand the biological and social aspects of the different species that the Galactic Council represented. "You were excellent today," said. "I did very little," replied. "I made one suggestion about mining rights." "You did much more than that," said. "You showed the council that there is another way to solve problems. Every time the council met before, they assumed that one side had to win and the other had to lose. You showed them that sometimes everyone can win if they are willing to think differently." Sat down heavily. The responsibility of his position was beginning to wear on him. He had never wanted to be a symbol. He had never wanted to represent humanity to the galaxy. He had just wanted to protect his colony and live a quiet life. "In the arena," said, "you asked a question that changed his life. You are asking the galaxy the same question, just in different words. You are asking them what kind of civilization they want to be." "And if they do not like the answer I suggest," asked. "Then at least you have given them the chance to consider the question," replied. "That is all anyone can ask." 3 months later, something remarkable happened. The Syndicate formally requested membership in the Galactic Council, but not as a military power or as a trading bloc. They requested membership as advocates for military reform. They wanted to use their expertise in combat and strength to help other species understand how to use force responsibly. Delivered the formal request himself. "My people have learned that strength without wisdom is just brutality," said before the council. "We want to help the galaxy understand that the strongest species are not those who can defeat all others. The strongest species are those who understand when not to fight. We want to partner with humans to teach this lesson throughout the galaxy." Watched from the observers' gallery as the council voted unanimously to accept the proposal. Humans and would work together. It was unprecedented. It was remarkable. It was exactly what the galaxy needed. That evening stood once more on the observation deck of Zephyr Station. The stars stretched before him in all directions. Somewhere out there, new colonies were being established. Somewhere out there, humans and were working together on joint projects. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was beginning to understand that strength and mercy were not opposites. They were the same thing viewed from different angles. Joined at the observation window, the 2 friends stood in silence for a long time, watching the vast expanse of space. "Do you ever regret asking me that question?" asked. Want me to keep it whole or tear it apart? Do you ever regret giving me that choice? Never, said. That question was the most important one I have ever asked. And when I asked it, I was not just asking you. I was asking the galaxy the same thing. What kind of civilization do you want to be? One that tears things apart, or one that keeps them whole? The galaxy is beginning to choose, said. Because of you, because you showed us that there was a choice. Smiled, he thought about his colony on 7. He thought about his family. He thought about the other humans who had fought so hard to build a place for themselves in this vast and dangerous galaxy. They had not done it by being the strongest. They had done it by being wise enough to know that being strong was not the same as being good. The arena had gone dead quiet when asked that question, and in that quiet, something had shifted. The galaxy had heard a question it had been asking itself for thousands of years without realizing it, and finally, it had begun to answer. Not with weapons and victory and defeat, but with something stronger and more lasting, with the choice to be better than survival, with the choice to be wise. Return as someone who has learned something essential. The syndicate will change. We will still be strong. We will still be warriors, but we will also learn from humans about something we have lost. What is that? Asked. The ability to choose what we do with our strength instead of assuming that we must always use it, said. You asked me in the arena if I wanted you to keep me whole or tear me apart. You were offering me a choice when no one had ever offered me one before. That choice changed everything. When I return home and tell this story to my people, that choice will change things for them as well. And stood together in silence as the moons climbed higher in the 7 sky. 2 beings from different species, brought together by conflict, but united now by understanding. Below them, the colony lights burned steady and constant, a small beacon of human persistence in an indifferent galaxy. Aided through space. Somewhere out there, a warrior was traveling toward them. Somewhere else, human representatives were preparing to take their seats at the Galactic Council. Somewhere on 7, colonists were celebrating the news that they were finally, officially, fully accepted as members of the galactic community. Thought about the moment in the arena when he had asked that question. Want me to keep it whole or tear it apart? It had not really been a question about violence. It had been a question about what kind of being wanted to be. It had been an offer to let someone choose their own future rather than having it forced upon them. The galaxy, it turned out, wanted to be asked the same question. What kind of civilization did it want to be? One that measured strength by destruction, or one that measured strength by the wisdom to know when not to destroy? Had asked that question in an arena. The galaxy had answered by opening its doors to humanity. And the best part, realized, was that the real work was only beginning. Had forgotten or never learned. True strength was knowing when not to use your power. And true power was the ability to show mercy without weakness. D.at, who had her hand over her mouth. He looked at Commissioner, who had leaned forward with sudden interest. The arena was completely silent. Even the wind through the ancient stone seemed to hold its breath. Asked, want me to keep it whole or tear it apart?